So welcome back to another episode of Sarva's RC. I believe this is part 4. Today we are going to be putting the bow house, however you want to say it, 8mm shaft, the pulley combo from PNW RC Madness, as well as the motor mount and Hobbywing Max 8 G2. So the way it's just all kind of lining up is that looks like how it's going to work best for kind of what you have to do at the same time. So bear with me, guys. Hopefully it's not too long of a video, but you know, a couple different components here that kind of all have to go together. You have to put the pulleys on the motor and vice versa, and so therefore you got to do the shaft, do the pulleys, and do the motor and motor mount kind of all at once for it to be complete. So we are going to work on that. Opening up this bow house pulley. So believe what we're gonna have to do here is get out our stock assembly, and from the looks of it, I'm gonna pull that gear off. So pull your input gear off, take out your little dog bone pin, okay, that gear is going to come off of that side. Alright, so we're going to have to take off our cush drive system here. So you're going to remove your spur gear cush drive assembly. We need to get this bearing off. I'm going to obviously double check to make sure everything lays in there correctly when we're done before I start snugging things up. Take those 2mm screws out. So I pulled that trail cover because we're going to need to be working there. I pulled the ESC, pretty self-explanatory. There is 2 screws that hold it in place, and you unplug the wire from your receiver. Pretty straightforward on that. Didn't feel the need to film that. Let's see. Does this just pull off, or? Can't tell if this just pulls off or if you need to unscrew these as well. Not sure. It may just pull off that shaft. Could be stuck. I'm going to try removing these, see if that does anything. This should just be your elastomer. I've never replaced it to know if you need to remove these or not. I'm thinking it's just stuck on the old shaft here. See if we can punch it out in some way. Yeah, there is. So your elastomer is going to pop off, and there's a pin there. So once you kind of loosen it up, you can get to that. We're going to pull the pin out. I'm not going to reuse any of this, I believe, short of one pin, but you're going to need that bearing. And so you have your new bow house. You're going to pull your sleeve off, put your bearing on, put your sleeve back on. How you know you do this right is the holes should line up. So now you should be able to drop this little dog bone in. Now your input gear will line up with that dog bone. And your last bearing. So that is how that all should go together. And just to double check, I'm going to drop it in and make sure, yep, bearings are in the bearing holders, so we should be good there. Now that bearing, there's nothing holding on, so it's going to kind of fling around a little bit, so make sure you get it in a spot where you're not going to lose it. Set that in the battery tray. Let's see. Up next, it's going to be your motor and pulleys. So got the P&WRC Madness motor mount here. We're not going to go as far as screwing it in because you still got to do some adjustments and whatnot before we screw in that motor base. But we are going to get the can itself mounted up to the P&WRC mount. And comes with a little hardware kit. So you're going to use the true wrench style bolts to go into the motor itself, and make sure that you're using the same washer. And these are 7mm, so I went ahead and pulled out a 7mm wrench just to be prepared. So we are going to get this bad boy essentially mocked up where we want it. I'm going to throw a little bit of Loctite. Just a tiny dab here. Could be good, could be bad, depending on how much adjusting I need to do, but we are going into aluminum. So you will get that lined up. Just get them snug enough to where it supports the motor, but still allows you to move it, adjust the mesh as most would call it, although we're not adjusting mesh with a belt drive, we're adjusting belt tightness. So get those threaded down. We'll just snug them up a tad. And they're probably going to have to be higher up for this big old motor and pulley system to be accommodated. So we're going to move it up there. Just a little snug. So it should support its own weight. And that's what we're going to be looking like. So these new G2s, they are longer. Usually the 800 is kind of short and fat. This fat and long. So next, you're going to go ahead and get your pinion pulley. So you're going to get this right here, 2 pulleys. I went ahead and went with a 25 millimeter quote-unquote pinion and a 35 millimeter spur. You're also going to get 4 grub screws. I'll tell you what size those are here in a second. Dang, some big boys. So those are 2.5 millimeter grub screws. And we are going to go ahead and put a dab of Loctite on the grub screws. So you're going to have 2 per pulley. The motor shaft is D-shaped, so you are going to get a grub screw on the flat part of the shaft, and what people have been saying, what Chris at PNWRC Madness has said, is to throw some Loctite on the motor shaft itself. So we're going to do that. I guess it helps and keeps you from having any belt slip or pulley slip whatsoever. So we'll thread these grub screws down a little bit. That way we can get them adjusted when need be. So I'm going to thread it just down to where you see it, but not to where it's entering the bore itself of the pulley here. Right. So go ahead and, as they say, put a dab of Loctite here on the shaft. It may even be too much. Apparently, when you take the pulley off, if you want to take the pulley off, you will be heating the motor shaft to do so. So, alright. So we have it on there. From what I've heard, you leave about 1 millimeter space. What I am going to do is essentially give myself space to be able to get my wrench in there, is my plan. Or 1 millimeter between your pulley and your motor mount screws. Not feeling that tighten up, which is odd. Did not get in the grub screw. Oh, grabbed the wrong size. Sorry about that, guys. So, try this again. Again, you need to get at least one grub screw on the Go to your mount and be able to fit your wrench. So mine are a tad bit tight, too close, so I'm going to back that off. You know what, maybe it's best if I just put the wrench on there. Cinch those down. That way I can still do my adjustments there. Starting to come together, what it's going to look like, guys. Yep, we're still good on getting the wrench in on both sides. Okay. So next up would be getting the spur gear on. So same situation. Gonna throw some Loctite on the grub screws, thread those in, start to thread those into the pulley. Just get those started. Just watch the bore shaft to see where you can just see the tip of the grub screw coming in. We're going to put a tiny bit of thread locker on the bow house shaft, just a tiny bit. Might have been too much, but slide that in. Try to get it to where you already have it lined up with the flat spot on the shaft. And we'll throw this assembly in there. And you're going to essentially align your pulleys. So take this out so we can get this in. And you're just going to essentially eyeball this till it looks like your pulleys are perfectly aligned, or as close as you can get them to where you like what you're seeing as far as lining them up. Let's say I'm pretty happy with that. So, going to cinch that down. Get that pulled back out. So so I can do both my grub screws. And now for the fun part of getting your belt on. So, from what I have seen, the easiest way to do this, get my Loctite lid back on, is to get your belt on to your spur pulley, or I mean your spur pulley, and obviously get that worked in to where you know it's in the teeth. Oh, do it the other way. And we are going to pop that in. Put our Traxxas gear cover on, if we can get it in there. To hold everything in place, so that way you're not fighting yourself. Just put one nut on here so it doesn't pull itself out. This is supposedly the hardest part of the belt drive, is getting your maybe I just need to give myself a little more room on the motor mount. I don't know. So after a ton of fighting, I have the belt on there, and I mean, that's all I can tell you, is you're just going to have to wrestle with it and get it on there. I will say, obviously, pulleys I'm running are pretty large in that sense, at 25-30, to where there's not a ton of room. So next, I'm going to get a couple of my motor mount screws in before I cinch these down, and start trying to adjust belt tension. And please, oh, don't do that. I'm gonna actually cinch the motor mount screws, or the tension screws, down just a tad, so that this thing is not flopping around. And so I don't need that belt. Okay, so we're going to flip this to the side. I believe in one of these I thought I still had a motor washer. I am going to still try to run my motor washers. Alright, so we have one motor mount screw slightly in there. Flinging screws all over the place, unfortunately. Let's go ahead and get the rest of these in there. Oh, these big builds are not easy. So hopefully, I don't know, I can speed up, skip through some of this stuff for you guys. Last one. Hopefully it's lining up because it wasn't looking like it was before. To where I was debating if I was going to be able to use is on. Probably skip belt tensioning. Everything I've heard, it's just by feel, by sound a lot. Sounds like it's squealing when you run it too tight. So probably skip that. But next, I at least got to cinch down those last two screws for the trio cover. See if this little tool that I have can reach down there. Good, it can. 2.5 mil. Snug that down. Well, we'll have to find that missing nut. I think I hear it. Hopefully it's not in the belt drive area. Good. So you can see, I mean, need to tension it up a little bit, but looking good so far. Sorry for the duration, guys. I'll try to trim it up as much as possible. As always, please like, comment, subscribe, and stay tuned for part 4. Part 4 should be ESC or steering components, one or the other, depending on when that servo gets here. All right, thanks, guys.